verses 1 through 8, and the letter of 2 Corinthians, chapter 4, verses 7 through 12. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of James and Salome bought spices so that they might go and anoint him. And very early on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb. They had been saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb?" When they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled back. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. But he said to them, "Do not be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has been raised. He is not here. Look, there is the place they laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter that he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." So they went out and fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. But we have this treasure in clay jars, so that it may be made clear that this extraordinary power belongs to God and does not come from us. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed. Perplexed, but not driven to despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Struck down, but not destroyed. Always carrying in the body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be made visible in our bodies. For while we live, we are always being given up to death for Jesus' sake, so that the life of Jesus may be made visible in our mortal flesh. So death is at work in us, but life in you. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
Prepare us to hear the word of your promise again. And hold on to that promise. Hold on to that hope. And look for you. And look for Easter. Amen. I wonder if the disciples even thought about going. Maybe they were ashamed of the events of the past week. Maybe they were just too worn down by grief, not even able to get up out of bed that morning. Do you think they even talked it over among themselves? Were they together? Did they talk with the women about going to the tomb with them? I don't know if they talked about it. I don't know if they thought about it. But the women were the only ones to go to the tomb. The disciples' grief was strong, but they were more than sad. They had not been who they wanted to be this past week. Judas had betrayed him. Peter had denied him. All of the disciples had abandoned him. After all that Jesus had done, when he needed them, they fled. And there was nothing they could do to fix that. Do you know that circumstance when there's something in your life that has gone wrong and you can't fix it? It happens in work sometimes. It happens at your house. The plumbing fails, your basement's flooding, and you don't know anything about plumbing, and you can't fix it. It happens in relationships sometimes, even relationships we care about the most. Sometimes we aren't our best selves. Sometimes things just go wrong and we can't make them right. I've learned something about myself. I have a propensity to mess things up. Francis Burford says it this way: wherever the line is drawn between good and evil, between acceptable and unacceptable, between cruel and kind, we're always going to be walking on both sides of that line. And not just by accident. As Burford says, it's our active inclination to break stuff, including moods and promises and relationships we care about and our own well-being. And sometimes we can't make it right. We learned this early on as children in nursery rhymes. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. And all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. Sometimes things go wrong and we can't make it right. My friend Bobby and I didn't feel like going to school. We wanted to play golf. We had cars. We had golf clubs. So why not? We left the school parking lot and swung by my house to pick up my golf clubs, and then we went golfing. I came home in my shorts and polo shirt, slightly sunburned with my golf clubs on my back. And there was my mother. She wasn't supposed to be home. She's supposed to be at work. Shame on her for skipping work. I hadn't even checked the garage. I didn't think it'd be a possibility she'd be home. She looked at me and said, "Did you skip school today to go golfing?" I was standing in my golf shorts, polo shirt, and clubs in my back. Now, usually I'm pretty quick with trying to get out of situations like this. But what was I going to say with my sunburn and my clubs? I had disobeyed, and I couldn't hide it, and I couldn't fix it. My mom said, "I trusted you, and you broke that trust." My sin was upon me. When we have messed it up and it can't be fixed, it can be painful. Trust isn't recovered with an "I'm sorry." Have you been in that position? Have you felt that pain of losing trust in someone, or having trust lost in you because you did something, you said something, and a simple "I'm sorry" doesn't just fix it? A good friend's father recently passed away. I expressed my condolences and asked how she was feeling. She said, "I don't know. He hasn't been a part of my life for so long. I decided long ago that I wasn't going to let him hurt me anymore when he didn't show up, didn't express interest, didn't show any sign of caring." "Are you going to go to the funeral?" I asked. And as soon as I did, I wished I had, and it seemed insensitive. I don't know. If I've learned anything, it is that I can't fix this. When life has gone wrong and there's no repair, it's a terrible place to be. The early morning journey to the tomb must have included some shame amidst the sadness. His followers had not been who they wanted to be. The women carried spices. Carrying the spices may have helped. If you have known grief, you know the odd comfort it can be to have something to do. Busy is your friend. It was their last act of love, spices for its broken and breathless body. Maybe for you it's making a casserole or a pie that you take to the home or to the church. They brought spices. And there at the tomb they saw the angel. Now don't think halo and wings and fat little babies flying around with little harps. An angel's just a holy messenger. You have probably had a few angels in your life, someone who brings a message from God. If you are like me, we almost always recognize them as angels after the fact. The holy messenger said, "He has been raised." Now there are two things about this message. The first is, resurrection is not our work. Death is the ultimate wrong that we cannot fix and we cannot change. There is no explanation of Easter except to say, this is what the love of God looks like in the face of death. Resurrection is something God does. God refuses to grant death the power to pull us from God. Paul says it this way, there is nothing that can separate you from the love of God, not heights or depths, nor rulers or angels or principalities, nothing above the earth or below the earth. Nothing can separate you from the love of God. God refuses to grant death the power to pull you from God. So in the hospice house and in the cities torn by violence and war, God is there pushing back the power of death. In hospital rooms and in hospital beds placed in familiar dens or living rooms, in Quebec or Orlando, or too many schools and malls across the country, when blood is spilled and breath is gone, God does what only God can do. After gunshots rang out on the streets of Peoria claiming another young life, or chilly waters consume the youngest refugees, God is there. The resurrection of Jesus means that death does not win, but the resurrection means more than that. God takes which we cannot make right and God redeems. Jesus was love, and the hard thing to face is how offensive we found that love to be. When the world tried to shut him up or tried to push him away, he wouldn't leave us. Jesus comes back. He comes back to us. We have an excellent preschool upstairs, and moms and dads drop off the treasure of their hearts with teachers. And the litany is always the same. I'll be back, they say. The hallways in September can be filled with the weeping and gnashing of teeth as little ones are abandoned by their parents. Don't cry, I'll be back. Now you stay here with Miss Larson, I'll be back. You stay here with Miss Price, I'll be back. And sure enough, by the end of the day, mom or dad has come back just like she promised. We actually have a very high percentage of parents who return for their children every day. They can't help it. That's what love does. Love can't stay away. Recently, I was traveling for a conference, and I was gone for a few days, and when I came back home, Verity ran to me and said, "Daddy, you came back. I love you when you come back." That's what love does. Then the strangest thing happens. 12 years pass, and these precious children grow up, and they get this thing called a driver's license. And the same lesson has to be taught again. Now remember your curfew time. I will, Dad. 12:15 is not the same as 12 o'clock. Don't be late. Dad, I know. And that's teenager language for, I'll be back. Don't worry, I'll come back. You don't have to cry. I'll be back. That's what love does. That's the best way I know to talk about Easter. Easter is the love of God come back to us. Even when we try to push Jesus away, he comes back. It's what love does. But there is more. The resurrection of Jesus Christ means there is life after death. The resurrection means even more than that. Resurrection means that the way of Jesus is true. It means that to live like Jesus is to be fully human. It means that sins are forgiven and life is made whole. But if that is true, then there's no doubt that Easter isn't over. It's not complete. The angel says he is not here. He has gone ahead of you to Galilee. Of course he has. We need to understand this. The angel was not giving the women an address to meet Jesus. It's not that Jesus retired to a Starbucks in Galilee and you're going to meet him there for a macchiato latte or something. Galilee is the place of ministry. Galilee is where Jesus taught and where he pushed back evil, where he healed and where he loved. That's where Jesus showed the love of God. Of course, he's going to be there. It's where he healed that which was broken, and where he forgave that which we cannot fix. So why is this important? Because that is where we see the love of God alive in this world. Resurrection is not just about life after we die. Resurrection is the battle God wages to repair and heal and redeem that which we cannot make right in this world. We sell the resurrection short when we think, I'll get to use that when I die. We use that now. Resurrection is about God fixing the broken places, fixing the things we cannot fix, forgiving that which we can't forgive, making whole that which is broken. And there's a lot broken in this world. There are a lot of broken hearts. I guess there are some even in this room right now. Resurrection is the battle God wages to repair and heal and redeem that which we cannot make right. My friend asked me a few days later, will I regret not going to my dad's funeral? I don't know. Perhaps you won't regret not going to the funeral in which your experience of your father is not the one portrayed or lifted up. But you might regret not having a chance to mark his passing, confront your conflicted feelings, and be able to be with others who know and honor your experience. So I helped plan a memorial service for my friend and her sister and other parts of her father's family, many of whom hadn't seen each other in quite some time. Now, no one could change the past. The relationship couldn't be altered, and yet there was honesty and longing and regret and laughter and love. My friend could have let anger control her. She could have let her injury define all that he and she could be, because neither of them could fix all that went wrong. But a family gathered in love and was honest, supported one another, and rekindled relationships. Now, I can't tell you that everything was all better after that. You know these matters are more complex than that, but it was a sign of grace. It was a moment when God brought life from that which seemed dead. Love showed up in honesty and pain, forgiveness, support, and relationships. Love took something painful and was able to pull a blessing from it. Love took something that was broken and was able to heal it. Even though the signs of the cracks remain, there's something new out of it. Love took the pain and the loss and the past hurt and transformed it into something new, resurrected it into something new. That's what love does. Sometimes God does what only God can do and brings new life from death. I think there are signs of God's love showing up among us. As Paul says, we have this treasure in clay jars. The power is from God, not from our own, which is why we are afflicted but not crushed, perplexed but not driven to despair, struck down but not destroyed. Easter isn't over, for the love of God has come back to us, and God's love is set loose in this world. So look for it. Look for Easter. The love of God will show up in your life. That's what love does. It will show up. It will heal. It'll transform. It'll keep coming back. Even if you push it away, it'll keep coming back, because nothing can separate you from it. Nothing can overpower it. No darkness, no death, no pain. Nothing can overcome the power of God's love for you, to transform you, to heal you, to make you whole, to bring you into new life that nothing can stop, nothing can cease. That's what love does. That's what Easter does, this day and every day. It's why we worship on Sunday, because every Sunday is a mini Easter, reminding us that Easter isn't over. The resurrection isn't a one-time thing. It's happening here and now. God's love come to us. God's power and God's love transforming us. That's what love does. That's what Easter does. Look for it. Live it. Let us pray together.